Let's talk about simplifying radicals or simplifying square roots. And this is kind of a older skill that we used a lot when calculators were not so abundant and so easy. But let me explain what I mean. Something like this, something like the square root of 9. Well, that's just 3, because 3 times 3 is 9. The square root of 16, well, that's 4, because 4 times 4 is 16. But what about something like the square root of 20? Now, the square root of 20, 4 squared is 16, 5 squared is 25, so it's, approximately 4 point something, right? We should be able to kind of estimate it using the perfect squares around it, 4 squared 16, 5 squared 25. But we would like to be able to make a better estimate, or what we call an exact answer. And the way we do that is by looking at our number and seeing which perfect squares it is divisible by. Now, I would always just, if I was asked to do this, make a quick list of the perfect squares. And this is this is easy enough to do. You just have to go down the line and do all of the whole numbers multiplied by themselves. So I'm going to go to 10 times 10. Now, I know sometimes teachers will leave these on the board. I don't do that. I think students can make these themselves. 1 squared, 2 squared, 3 squared, 4 squared, 5 squared, 6 squared, 7 squared, 8 squared, 9 squared, 10 squared. Okay? Now, with something like this, there are lots of methods you'll see about like drawing little branches off, about listing all of the factors, things like that. I'm going to show you the way that has always worked the best for me and for students that I have. And that's, you start with 20, and of course we're looking for factors. Nothing is going to be more than halfway to 20, right? 10 times 2, 10 is the largest factor other than just 20 itself. So I always think about that first. I think, okay, half of 20 would be 10. So I'm not going to look at any perfect squares that are over 10, because anything over 10, any of these are not going to divide out of 20. And then I just work my way down. I say, well, 20 divided by 9 is not a nice number, but 20 divided by 4 is. 20, just 20, can be written as 4 times 5. So the square root of 20 can be written as the square root of 4 times the square root of 5. Well, the square root of 4 is 2. And the square root of 5 isn't nice, so we just leave it. It's 2 times the square root of 5. Now, why I said this was kind of an older skill is that oftentimes we had an idea of what the square root of 5 was, because it was a pretty small number. It was 2 point something. And then we could say, okay, square root of 5 is 2 point something. Just double that to 4 point something. And it gave us kind of a nice way to estimate what these square roots were. Let's do another one. Let's do square root of 75. So again, start by just thinking, halfway. I know halfway is not even, in this case, a nice whole number, but starting, around 30 something. So you start right in here. Again, you don't need to look at these because these numbers are too big to divide out of 75. So just look below that. 75 divided by 36, no, yes. And you always want the biggest one, the biggest factor. This will work. 75 can be written as 25 times 3. But that's the square root of 75, so it's the square root of 25 times the square root of 3. The square root of 25 is 5. And again, you'd say, well, square root of 3 is 1 point something, and just multiply that by 5, give you a nice idea of what the square root of 75 would be. All right, let's do the square root of 300. Now, I'm going to do this one for a couple of reasons. That is, number one, I got to extend my my perfect squares, because, of course, half of 300 is 150, and I didn't even write enough perfect squares over here to get me there. So let me extend it. 11 squared, 12 squared, and 13 squared. Okay, well, 150 is in here. This won't go into 300. This won't go into 300, but 100 sure will. So we could say, well, it's going to be the 100 times 3, but we got to put the square root there because it's the square root of 300. The square root of 100 is 10. 10 square roots of 3. So again, my suggestion is always look at the number, if it's not a perfect square, that is, and go to your list about halfway. 10 was half of 20, and just work your way down. Which perfect square will go into it? 75 is started right in here. 25 was the first. 300 started in here and just worked our way to 100. If this video helped you, please like and subscribe for more math help.